Welcome back to Cups of Joe's Physical Therapy. I'm Joe Gambino.
And I'm Joe Lavaca.
And today we're going to be talking about the deadlift, which is one of my personal favorite exercises that are out there. Pretty much it's one of those ego exercises. You know, you pull 300, 400, 500 pounds, and hey, what's better than that? But at the same time, for rehab purposes, it's a great exercise to introduce to patients where it allows us to become very functional, where we're actually able to connect our arms holding a weight out in space, push our feet through the ground, and maintain tension throughout top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your takes on how it's prescribed in either way?
Well, I think that it's kind of overly and underly prescribed, and it depends on what field we're really looking at. From a PT perspective, I would say that it's very underutilized because people come in with a big fear avoidance of this pattern, including PTs to prescribe this pattern. God forbid we flex our spines. God forbid we load the spine. That's just, highly irrational way of thinking. Whereas in the fitness industry, it kind of is on the opposite end of the spectrum, where it's just kind of built into everyone's program. It's an Olympic lift. It's a necessity. You have to do this and have to do that. Whereas we're not looking at enough of the movement patterns prior to make sure people have the capability to perform a safe deadlift. And I think that's really the key where the deadlift goes wrong.
Yes, I agree. And if we look at the deadlift, and a lot of times I see people either prescribing it or people doing it on their own. It's not that it's a bad exercise, it's that people either cannot hip hinge or without flexing their spine, or they can't lift their leg up laying on the back. They can't do a straight leg raise that's normal, about 70 degrees. So if you're missing either one, and you're gonna have troubles with the deadlift, whether or not you go sumo with wider feet, something may go wrong, especially if you have an asymmetrical difference. So if you have a straight leg raise of 70 on one side, which is really good, and then only 35 on the other side, there's something going on in that pattern that no matter how good to your eye it may look, something may go wrong over time. So it's definitely something that we need to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. And that's an easy assessment. I mean, 70 degrees straight leg raise, most of our phones have devices that can measure that angle for us. We don't even need a goniometer. We can eyeball it. We can probably get pretty close to that assessment. Another really super easy assessment is people can they just perform a toe touch?
Yeah.
I mean, do they have the necessary posterior chain mobility to perform just basic functional movement first? So my personal screen for deadlift is straight leg raise, as Joe mentioned, and can you toe touch? Because if you can't get down to touch your toes without any weight in there, how can we expect you to lift 200-300 pounds of pressure off the floor in the opposite direction? Mm-hmm. It just wouldn't make much sense. So in terms of cues or keys for success with the hip hinge, there's a multitude of different strategies out there. One of the ones I just wanted to quickly show you guys was one that actually came from Mark Chang, his prehab rehab medicine course, which is phenomenal. He talked about the skin fold assessment. And essentially, if you allow me to show you, it involves grabbing onto the lower part of skin in your back, okay? And then as you go down,
Turn to the camera.
as you go down, you should be able to immediately feel if and when you lose that skin fold, okay? And that's going to give you that instant feedback of if you're rounding out the spine and if you're hinging properly. And Joe, you made a good point before when we started recording, is as far down as you can get, if that's not the height of the bar, well then stop right there. You're not in a good position, right? Or maybe raise the ground up. Get that weight on a few platforms to bring it up to you. And that's a good modification for the deadlift that I've done with people and patients as well.
And I think the last thing to kind of touch on is if you besides the skin fold, you could even just use a broomstick, a dowel rod, and just put it across your back. And if you just keep 3 points of contact in mind, it's going to be the back of your head, the upper back over here, and your tailbone. If you can maintain all 3 points of contact as you're hinging, as you're deadlifting, or whatever it may be, you should have the prerequisite mobility to get down, grab the bar, and safely lift. And then it just becomes, can you safely load,
Right.
if you're not going too heavy too quickly.
Right. And my personal favorite part about the deadlift is how multidimensional it is. If done properly, it's going after cervical stability, it's going after scapular stability and shoulder packing. You throw one leg involved, now you have an anti-rotation core exercise. So, I mean, really, you can take it a lot of different ways and really think about it with a lot of different patients, including even runners in that instance. And it becomes a lot more accessible, and you don't have to just think about it with your low back pain or your hip pain patients, because, as we know, there's not one exercise that is just, streamlined to one person or one individual. I think, you kind of rob yourself or sell yourself a little bit short if you think about exercising for specific diagnoses. And, that's why we're so passionate about the squat and the deadlift, and that's why we needed to get it off our chest, right? Episode 1 and 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Big stuff.
And I do think it does belong in everyone's program, but there's a time and a place and some prerequisites. So hopefully you guys all kind of get a gist of this. And if there's any questions, comments, concerns, please leave us some comments, subscribe to us, let us know how we're doing, if you like it. Until next time.
Happy rehabbing, everyone.